January 29th, 1945. 2:47 p.m., Holtzheim, Belgium. First Sergeant Leonard Funk turns the corner of a farmhouse and stops. 90 German soldiers are staring at him, not hiding, not retreating, staring. Some already have rifles in their hands. Others are bending down calmly, picking weapons off a pile in the snow like men choosing tools, not preparing to kill. 4 American soldiers are kneeling a few meters away, hands locked behind their heads, helmets pushed low breath, fogging in the cold air. 20 minutes ago, those Germans were prisoners, captured, disarmed, finished. Now they're free, armed, organized. And Funk is standing in the worst possible place a human being can stand in a war. A German officer steps forward, confident, angry. Close enough that Funk can smell tobacco on his breath. The officer jams an MP-40 submachine gun straight into Funk's stomach and starts shouting. It's German. Funk doesn't speak German. None of the Americans do. The officer shouts again, louder. His face is red now, veins crawling up his neck. This is the part where prisoners usually nod, or freeze, or slowly raise their hands and hope they live long enough to regret it. Funk looks around. 90 enemies, half-armed, the rest reaching for weapons. 4 of his men on their knees, 1 more American beside him, just as helpless. The math is simple, brutal, final. There is no version of this where Leonard Funk wins. Every military manual ever written agrees on one thing. When you're outnumbered 90-1 with a gun in your gut, you surrender. You don't hesitate. You don't improvise. You survive if you're lucky. Funk does none of that. He starts laughing. Not a polite laugh. Not nervous chuckling. Real laughter. Loud. Uncontrolled. The kind that bends you forward and makes breathing difficult. The German officer freezes. This is not how prisoners behave. The officer screams again, louder, angrier. Certain volume will fix whatever is wrong with this American. Funk laughs harder. He can't stop. Later, he will say he tried. He will say something about the absurdity of being screamed at in a language he doesn't understand with a gun pressed into his stomach. Some of the German soldiers start laughing too, just a little, confused laughter. The moment stretches. Something fragile cracks. And in that crack, everything changes. What happens next takes less than a minute. When it's over, 21 German soldiers will be dead. Dozens will be wounded. The rest will surrender again, shaking, throwing weapons into the snow. Leonard Funk will still be alive. And no one watching this moment will ever forget how it started. With a laugh. Leonard Funk did not grow up dreaming about medals. He grew up in western Pennsylvania, in a place built from smoke steel and routine. His town existed for one purpose: work. You woke up early, you went to the mill, and you hoped the machine didn't take a finger today. That was ambition. That was success. He was born in 1916, just in time to come of age when everything collapsed. The Great Depression didn't arrive with drama. It arrived quietly, like a door closing. Jobs disappeared. Futures shrank. College was not a decision you made. It was a story you stopped telling yourself. Leonard learned responsibility early because there was no alternative. Bills didn't care about dreams. By the time war started tearing through Europe, Leonard wasn't looking for adventure. He was looking for stability. In 1941, when the draft expanded, his number came up. No speeches, no hesitation. He reported when told. At the induction center, the Army looked at him and saw nothing remarkable. 5'5", 140 pounds, the kind of man who disappears in a crowd. The kind who gets assigned paperwork, not heroics. That assumption lasted about 5 minutes. Because when volunteers were asked to step forward for airborne training, Leonard did. Paratroopers were not glamorous in 1941. They were experimental, untested. The concept sounded ridiculous. Jump out of a perfectly good airplane, land behind enemy lines, surrounded, and fight your way back. Most soldiers had a sensible reaction to this idea. They stayed where they were. Leonard stepped forward, not because he wanted glory, not because he thought it was brave, but because dangerous jobs came with purpose, and purpose mattered more than comfort. In a strange way, it was practical. If you were going to be sent into a war, you might as well be useful. Airborne training did not care about motivation. It cared about endurance. Running until legs failed. Falling until bruises stopped hurting. Being shouted at until fear lost its meaning. Half the men quit. Some were sent home. Others learned quickly that panic was heavier than any parachute. Leonard did not stand out. He didn't talk much. He didn't compete for attention. He learned procedures, learned timing, learned how to keep moving when his body said, stop. The Army likes men like that. Quiet. Reliable. Difficult to break. By the time he earned his jump wings, there was still nothing heroic about him on paper, which is exactly why no one expected what he would do later. Airborne training does not build heroes. It filters people. The Army never pretended otherwise. The point was not to inspire. The point was to remove anyone who hesitated when things stopped making sense, running until legs shook, climbing until hands bled, jumping from towers that made the ground feel uncomfortably far away. If fear won even once, the training noticed. Most men arrived confident. Many left quietly. Days blurred into repetition. Mornings began before the sun. Nights ended after the body stopped arguing. There was no encouragement, only correction. No praise, only silence, when you finally got something right. The instructors were not cruel for entertainment. They were efficient. Screaming saved time. Pain simplified decisions. The airborne idea was simple and absurd at the same time. You would exit an aircraft on purpose, trusting fabric cords and gravity to behave. You would land wherever chance decided. Then you would fight immediately, surrounded without maps that made sense or radios that worked. It wasn't bravery they were training. It was automatic behavior. The jump towers came next. Standing at the edge, wind pulling at your uniform, the brain screaming that this was unnecessary and deeply stupid. That was the test. Not whether you were afraid, but whether fear delayed movement. Hesitation was heavier than any parachute. Leonard Funk learned quickly. He didn't rush. He didn't freeze. He stepped when told, pulled when trained, landed, rolled, stood up, moved on. No drama, no speeches. Just sequence after sequence, drilled into muscle memory. That was the real lesson. Under stress, thinking slows. The body takes over. Training replaces decision. When chaos arrives, there is no time for debate. You either move correctly or you don't move at all. Men who needed reassurance didn't last. Men who needed explanations didn't either. The survivors were not fearless. They were predictable, reliable, boring in the best possible way. By the end, the physical exhaustion was constant. Bruises blended together. Sleep became shallow. Pain turned into background noise. And somewhere along the way, fear stopped being dramatic. It became another signal, like hunger or cold. When Funk earned his jump wings, nothing visible changed. He didn't stand taller. He didn't talk louder. But something underneath had shifted. He had learned to act before doubt could speak. Years later, in a frozen Belgian village, with a gun pressed into his stomach, and 90 enemies watching him, there would be no time to think. And that precisely was the point. The night over Normandy does not feel heroic. It feels loud, confused, and wrong. The aircraft shakes as anti-aircraft fire climbs toward it, red and green tracers slicing through the darkness. The men inside can hear metal being hit, not catastrophically, just enough to make everyone aware that luck is already being spent. Leonard Funk stands in line with the others, weighed down by equipment that feels heavier every second. 60 pounds strapped to a human body that will soon be falling through the night. The jump light turns green earlier than planned. Too low, too fast. There's no time to argue. He steps out. The blast from the propellers slams into him like a fist. Then the parachute opens, and suddenly everything goes quiet. Not peaceful. Empty. Below him is France. Occupied France. Enemy territory in every direction. The plan dissolves immediately. Aircraft are scattered. Paratroopers are blown miles off course. Some land in flooded fields and drown under the weight of their gear. Others drop directly into German positions and are killed before they can even cut themselves free. Radios fail. Units vanish. Maps mean very little now. Funk hits the ground hard. His ankle twists badly on impact. The pain is sharp and immediate, the kind that tells you something is wrong and will stay wrong for a while. He tests it. It works barely. That's enough. He buries his parachute and starts moving. He is nowhere near his drop zone. Alone in the dark, injured behind enemy lines, Funk does what airborne training taught him to do. He keeps moving, slowly at first, carefully, listening more than looking. Within hours, he finds another paratrooper, then another, and another. None of them are from his unit. Different regiments, different companies, different plans that no longer exist. 18 men in total, all lost, all armed, all waiting for someone to decide what happens next. Funk doesn't give a speech. He doesn't announce himself. He simply starts making decisions. Where to move, when to stop, when to hide, when to fight. For 10 days, they move through German-held territory, traveling at night, hiding during the day, skirting patrols when possible, engaging only when they have to. Funk insists on walking point, despite his ankle placing himself at the most dangerous position without comment. It isn't bravery. It's risk management. If someone has to be first better, it's the one thinking clearly. They steal food when they can, sleep in ditches, listen to German vehicles pass close enough to hear engines idle. Every mistake could cost lives. Every decision stacks weight onto the next one. And somehow, none of them die. 10 days behind enemy lines, roughly 40 miles covered on foot. 18 men walk back into Allied lines together. No casualties, no missing, no dramatic last stand. Just survival done correctly. There are medals later. A silver star. Praise written in clean sentences by officers far from the hedgerows. But the real result is quieter. Leonard Funk has learned something most soldiers never do. Chaos can be navigated. Pain can be ignored. And leadership at its core is not about inspiration. It's about keeping people alive when the plan is already gone. September 1944 does not arrive with relief. It arrives with ambition. The plan is bold. Too bold, some would say. Airborne troops drop deep into enemy territory to seize bridges, hold them long enough for ground forces to race forward and crack open the road into Germany. On paper, it looks clean. On a map, everything lines up. War, unfortunately, has never respected maps. Leonard Funk does not see the entire operation. He never will. He sees only his slice of it measured in minutes, angles, and threats that are suddenly very close. The landing itself goes smoothly enough. That alone feels suspicious. Objectives are taken, positions secured. The early hours suggest the plan might actually work, which in war is often the first warning sign. Then Funk notices something that was not supposed to be there. 3 German anti-aircraft guns are firing from elevated ground, their barrels flashing as they rake the sky. Gliders are coming in low, slow, and heavy. They carry jeeps, artillery ammunition, medical teams. They cannot maneuver. They cannot dodge. If those guns keep firing, men will die before their boots touch the ground. This is not a strategic puzzle. It is a timer. Funk studies the position. Sandbags, camouflage, interlocking fields of fire. Roughly 20 German soldiers manning the guns and providing security. It is a prepared position. Textbook doctrine is clear on this point. You do not assault a defended emplacement without superior numbers. Funk has 3 men. That makes the ratio very unfavorable. 7-to-1 depending on how generously you count. Doctrine would advise waiting, calling for support, marking the position, and letting someone else deal with it. All perfectly reasonable suggestions assuming time exists. It does not. So Funk does something that looks irrational from a distance and very logical up close. He attacks immediately. No build-up, no maneuver to look impressive later. Speed is the only advantage available, and he uses all of it. The 4 Americans move fast, close, and violently. The Germans are focused upward, tracking gliders, expecting fire from the air, not an assault from below. The first moments decide everything. Security troops go down before they understand what is happening. Funk does not pause to admire efficiency. He keeps moving. The gun crews are next. One position falls, then the second, then the third. The barrels stop flashing. The sky goes dark again. The gliders land. Hundreds of men who will never know Leonard Funk's name survive because 3 anti-aircraft guns go silent at exactly the right moment. When it is over, the numbers are suddenly reversed. 20 Germans are dead or captured. 4 Americans are still standing. The math has flipped not because the odds were ignored, but because they were attacked before they could settle. Later, this action will be summarized neatly. A citation, a few sentences. Distinguished Service Cross. Words like extraordinary heroism appear on paper. Funk does not read those words in the moment. What he learns instead is simpler and more dangerous. Sometimes the safest option is the one that looks the worst on a briefing slide. Sometimes hesitation is the real risk, and sometimes when the window is small enough, the only winning move is to step through it before anyone has time to close it. This is not recklessness. It is familiarity with calculated danger, and it becomes a habit. Winter arrives before mercy does. By December 1944, the war in Europe has changed its tone. The speed is gone. The optimism is gone. What remains is cold exhaustion, and men who have learned too much about how this ends. The German counteroffensive crashes into the Ardennes like a blunt instrument. Snow buries roads. Temperatures drop below 0. Engines refuse to start. Rifles jam. Soldiers freeze in place, sometimes permanently. This is not maneuver warfare. This is survival under pressure. Then Malmedy happens. On December 17th, a column of American soldiers is captured near a crossroads. They are not frontline infantry. They are observers, radio operators, men trained to look and listen, not to fight tanks. They surrender. hands up, weapons down, prisoners of war. And then they are shot. Machine guns, pistols, rifles. Men fall into the snow. Wounded men are finished off at close range. Bodies pile up in a frozen field. 84 Americans die there. Some survive only by pretending to be dead, lying still while boots pass close enough to touch. When the survivors crawl back to friendly lines, the story spreads fast. This is not combat. This is execution. Before Malmedy, the war had rules. Unwritten, imperfect, but real. When a fight was lost, men surrendered. Prisoners were taken. The system was brutal but predictable. You could calculate risk. You could plan for survival. Malmedy shatters that illusion. The message is simple and terrifying. Surrender no longer guarantees life. The uniform you wear may decide your fate before you open your mouth. The reaction among American units is immediate. Quiet at first, then harder. Some officers issue unofficial guidance. No SS prisoners, no second chances. Men stop discussing what they would do if captured. The question answers itself. Leonard Funk hears the details like everyone else. The field, the snow, the bodies. He has seen death before. Normandy, Holland. Friends lost in ditches and hedgerows. But this is different. This is murder after the fight is over. Something settles inside him. It is not rage. Rage burns out. This is colder, more permanent. He makes a decision without ceremony, without announcing it to anyone. He will never surrender to the Germans, not because he wants to die, because surrender is no longer a strategy. It is a gamble with unacceptable odds. From that point on, every calculation changes. Situations that once had an exit no longer do. Hands do not go up. Weapons do not get dropped unless there is no one left to see it. Compliance is no longer safety. Hesitation is no longer neutral. The war has removed a door. When Funk moves forward after Malmedy, he carries the same equipment, the same rank, the same responsibilities, but mentally, he is somewhere else. There is a line behind him now that he will not cross again. Weeks later, in a small Belgian village, when a German officer presses a weapon into his stomach and demands surrender, Funk does not weigh options. That choice was already made. The village of Holtzheim looks quiet when it finally falls. Snow covers the roofs. Smoke drifts low. The gunfire has thinned to scattered echoes. For Company C, the assault has worked. Houses cleared, resistance broken, prisoners gathered. It feels like the kind of moment soldiers learn to trust too early. That trust is the mistake. There aren't enough men to guard 80 prisoners properly. There never are. 4 soldiers are assigned. 4 is all that can be spared. The rest are needed elsewhere, clearing the last pockets of resistance. The prisoners are herded into the yard of a farmhouse, weapons stacked in a neat pile, hands up, heads down. The routine is familiar, almost boring. War punishes boredom. A German patrol appears out of the snow. White camouflage capes blend perfectly with the winter landscape. At a distance, they look American. Close enough, they are not. The 4 guards realize the problem too late. Weapons are knocked aside. Commands shouted. Knees hit the ground. The prisoners are freed. 80 Germans become 90. They do not panic. They do not scatter. They organize. Rifles are handed out. Machine guns positioned. Orders given quickly, efficiently. The plan is obvious. Wait. Let the Americans move deeper into the village, then hit them from behind. End it cleanly. This is when Leonard Funk walks around the corner. He is not rushing. He is not cautious. He is doing what leaders do after an assault, checking on prisoners, checking on guards, making sure nothing has gone wrong. Everything has. He stops. The scene makes no sense at first. His men are on their knees. The prisoners are standing. Weapons are everywhere. German voices fill the air, sharp and controlled. A German officer spots him immediately. The stripes on Funk's sleeve are impossible to miss. The officer steps forward and presses an MP-40 into Funk's stomach. Hard. The order is shouted, loud, furious, in German. Funk does not understand a word of it. He looks left. He looks right. 90 Germans, half armed, half reaching for weapons. 4 Americans helpless in the snow. 1 American beside him, frozen. There is no maneuver, no flanking option, no delay tactic that makes sense. This is the end of the math. The sensible choice is surrender, the professional choice, the choice that preserves life, the choice every manual would recommend. Funk remembers Malmedy. He remembers bodies in a frozen field. Men shot after surrendering. He remembers the door that was removed from the war weeks ago, so he laughs. It starts quietly, then it doesn't. It is not polite laughter. It is loud and uncontrolled, the kind that bends your shoulders forward and makes breathing difficult. The officer stiffens. This is not how prisoners behave. He shouts again, louder. Certain volume will solve the problem. Funk laughs harder. Some of the German soldiers glance at each other, confused. A few laugh, too unsure why. The tension shifts, just a fraction. Enough. Still laughing, Funk reaches for his Thompson, slowly, carefully. Exactly how a man would move if he were surrendering a weapon. The officer watches closely. This is good. Control is being restored. The American is complying. Funk's hand closes on the grip. In one motion, everything changes. The Thompson comes off his shoulder and into line. The trigger is pulled. The first burst hits the officer in the chest at point-blank range. He is dead before his body understands it. Funk pivots and keeps firing. The weapon bucks. The sound is deafening in the confined space. Men fall. Snow turns dark. 30 rounds are gone in seconds. The magazine runs dry. This is the most dangerous moment of all. Reloading takes 2 seconds if you are practiced. 2 seconds is a lifetime when 90 men are pointing guns at you. Funk does not think about it. His hands move. Empty magazine out. Fresh one in, bolt racked. Muscle memory compressing years of training into a heartbeat. He is shouting now. Pick up their weapons. The 4 Americans on their knees move. They grab rifles from the fallen. They fire. The fight explodes outward. The Germans are in chaos. Their officer is dead. The man who was laughing is killing them. Orders vanish. Some shoot back wildly. Bullets snap past Funk's head. 1 American beside him goes down, killed instantly. Funk does not slow. He keeps moving, firing, shifting position, controlling space with violence. The second magazine empties. Another reload. The Germans break. Hands go up. Weapons hit the snow. Men back away, terrified, shocked by how fast control has evaporated. In less than a minute, it is over. 21 Germans lie dead. 24 more are wounded. The rest surrender again, trembling hands raised higher this time. Funk stands in the yard, smoke curling from the Thompson. The snow is torn up. The quiet returns slowly, cautiously. He looks at his men. That he says almost conversationally was the stupidest thing I have ever seen. The village is secured soon after. The surviving prisoners are marched away under heavier guard. Reports are written, statements taken. The incident spreads through the regiment in fragments. A sergeant who laughed at 90 Germans. A firefight that lasted seconds. Bodies in the snow. Later there will be medals, citations, clean language to describe something that was anything but clean. But in that moment, none of that matters. What matters is this. When the impossible arrived, Leonard Funk did not improvise. He executed. And 60 seconds changed everything. The war does not end with noise. It ends quietly. After Holtzheim, there are reports, signatures, dates written neatly at the top of forms. There are statements taken in calm rooms far from snow and smoke. The language is careful, controlled. It has to be. Paper does not like chaos. The Medal of Honor comes later. September 1945. The White House. A clean uniform replaces the muddy one. The war is already turning into memory. A president places a ribbon around Leonard Funk's neck and says he would rather have that medal than be president of the United States. It is meant as praise. It is also an admission. Funk accepts it the same way he accepted everything else, without ceremony. He does not give speeches about courage. He does not build a legend around himself. He does not write books explaining how to survive impossible situations. When people ask about Holtzheim, about the laughter, about the bodies in the snow, he shrugs. Did what I had to do. That is all. When the war is over, Funk goes home. Not to parades or podiums, but to a desk. He works for the Veterans Administration. Paperwork, forms, claims. The slow, unglamorous work of helping other men carry what they brought back from the war. He does it for decades, quietly, reliably. The medals sit somewhere nearby, but they do not lead the conversation. This is not how war stories usually end. There is no transformation into a larger-than-life figure, no appetite for myth. Funk does not trade on what happened. He does not need to. What mattered to him already happened in 60 seconds in a frozen yard. And that is the point. War does not reward strength the way stories claim it does. It does not consistently favor size, volume, or fury. More often, it favors the people who keep their minds when everything else collapses, the ones who do not freeze, the ones who recognize the moment and act before fear finishes its sentence. At Holtzheim, Leonard Funk was not brave in the cinematic sense. He was not fearless. He was not reckless. He was lucid. He saw what surrender meant in that moment. He understood the cost of hesitation. And he moved. That clarity did not come from instinct. It came from training experience and a decision made weeks earlier about what lines could no longer be crossed. When Funk is buried decades later, there is no spectacle. Just a headstone, a name, dates. He rests among thousands of others who made similar decisions in quieter ways. Most people never hear his story. That may be the most honest ending possible. Because the lesson is not that one man killed 21 enemies. The lesson is that in war, clear thinking is often the rarest weapon of all.